Hello and welcome to Seafaom Isles Draft League Season 4. It's been a while since we last did one of these, but here we are, post Gen 9, post home too, so this should be pretty fun. Today, well, this is the first time I think either of us hasn't been a coach. So, I'm joined by Reich, not a coach this season. Yeah. So, I don't really want to beat around the bush a whole ton. So, let's get on to the first team.
Alrighty, that sounds good.
Our first team that we're discussing right now is Rift. I call him Rift. I have no idea how to say his name. But he's the coach of Chicago Illinois. Yeah.
I've got a few facts written down beside me. Would you like me to go through some of them?
Yeah, go ahead. Give your thoughts.
Okay. I've took some notes. I've taken down everyone's speed tiers for easy reference. So on the Chicago Chamois, the speed tiers go from 110, 105, 100. And we've got 95, 87, 86, 80, 71, 260s, 30 and 10. So 110 being our fastest option and one of the slowest possible ones in the draft with that 10 speed trappage. So not super fast, but no obvious gaps in the speed tiers.
Yeah. And what's nice is so specifically Tyranitar has a speed threat. Tauros is a decent scarfer. Tusk gets the spin boost.
Got a little bit of priority via the Entei with E-Speed. It's nice. And the good old first impression packet. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Straight off the bat, we mentioned really strong Psychic Dark fighting core. With the Tusk, the Glowking, and the Mega T-Tar.
Yeah.
Really solid rock options. 4 rockers is plenty, and they are reliable rockers between the fact that you've got Mesprit and Polion, which can pretty reliably set up rocks any matchup, alongside your more offensive rockers of Tusk and T-Tar, which is really good for them.
Yeah. Also accompanied that is best spinner in the game, pretty much, bar none, in Tusk. So that's great. Also, 2 solid defoggers in the tier 3. Rotom is always spectacular. Great tier 3 pick. I think it combines really well with Zarude, even though it's a double grass core. That there's a Volturn synergy there. And they really set up Entei well, I think, because they really come in on bulky waters nicely, especially Zarude with jungle healing.
I wanted to add into, I think the fact that we allow Pursuit in this league is going to be really good for the Galarian Slowking. It's always a setup threat if you do not prep for it, and I think T-Tar being there to facilitate removing Psychics is going to be really good for it.
Yeah.
One thing I will point out is that there is a big physical bias in a lot of the offensive core of this team. You've got a really strong edge point combo between T-Tar and Tusk, but when you add on Zarude and Entei, the main rating of this team is physically oriented.
Yeah.
And that could be something teams could perhaps attempt to build for when versing the Chamois. Other things
do-
I wanted to point out as well.
You do have
Is,
to be a
um,
little careful with the Sylveon, like specs with like hyper voice pixelate. That can still punch.
You can still punch, definitely.
yeah.
But I
So
would
there
say
are-
on paper, really strong physical wall could give this team trouble. Like, I don't know, maybe like a Dondozo or something. Or is it Donzo? I always forget how to say it. Dondozo.
Yeah.
Something like that could be really challenging for the offensive core of this team to break because of how physically bulky it is. Still really
I
strong
forgot
core.
about unaware. Yeah. Overall, I mean, that's pretty scared of a Scarfer above the max speed as well. But there is spectacular bulk here with Great Tusk and King and Mesprit and Sylveon too. So overall, like a really bulky team, just a little slow.
Found weakness wise, I've gone through the type weakness chart. This team is fairly weak to ice and water if you remove the Empoleon.
Oh yeah.
You've obviously got your double grasses, Tuskle weak to ice, and your main resistances are your Entei and your Empoleon. Water, same way, can be really strong if spammed, particularly against the main offensive core of this team outside of like Zarude. Could struggle with the rest of the waters. The other one too, if you remove Levitate, this team is very weak to ground. So, you know, Mold Breaker, Excadrill, Earthquakes a lot of this team. Particularly because your main ground answers are Levitate mons, so you got your Rotomo, Mesprit, and your Zarude can take on the ground hits, but it's your main one. So careful around Edgequake spam. Another thing I want to point out, maybe this team could struggle to break a really bulky theory, but otherwise it's a pretty strong core, and keen to see how it does.
Yeah. I like this draft. Like all things considered, it's solid. Got all the basic utilities, got the speed tiers, got the bulk, got the breaking potential, I guess. Sweeping potentials there. Like fundamentally sound draft with some weaknesses. But without further ado, let's move on to the second coach, Esla Kirba.
The mustachioed Golisopod Guardians, MSG. Not good for you.
I had to abbreviate this name. It's a little bit long. But
right, we like a long name. A long name is good. It's
So-
a good acronym to shorten it to.
yeah. So, just like Rifk, I think this is also Esla's first official FNF draft. I'm not super sure, but I think it is. So I'm just gonna say it is. And yeah, now we can get on to the
Would you like to go
draft.
through the speed tiers? So on this team, we've got a stirring 143 out the back, followed by a 110, a 101, 98, 290s, 80, 74, 50, 36, 30, and 29. So Zeraora, obviously you've got one of the faster unboosted speed tiers in the game. But apart from that, under that 110, there's no real significant gaps, which is very nice.
Yeah.
Great rocker
And-
options. We've got 5 stealth rockers here.
Yeah. So, what I find really nice about having Zeraora specifically is like it's kind of challenging to kind of make your gaps not work, but you can still challenge stuff like Dragapult, and you outspeed Megalopony without a Scarfer, for example. Like, there's nice merit to just having a really fast Pokemon that doesn't necessarily have to lock into a Scarf. And I really like Zero for that. But overall, I would say the main draw that I see to this draft is it's just nuclear with what Sharpness, Blade, Arcanine, Hisui, and Sheer Force Lando. And Hydreigon, obviously.
I've got written here, I've basically said you've got some really big hitters, plus a really good cheap web setup, which will go very nicely with this team. I wanted to point out too, there is a nice Trick Room option between Aromatisse, Snorlax. Aromatisse is an underrated Trick Room offensive option. It's got Nasty Plot and boosted with maybe a Life Orb. Fairy is a really good type to spam under Trick Room. But the same with Snorlax, if you can get a Trick Room and get Snorlax in with a Belly Drum or something, it can be really scary.
Yeah.
We've got Snorlax as well. We've got Hisuian Zoroark, which is a very cool new addition this gen. With Illusion, on this team, it's actually quite a nice little fit. You've got a few mons that are not keen about fighting types, particularly the Snorlax and the Hydreigon, which allows Hisuian Zoroark a few opportunities to come in and click its coverage and take out a few threats on the opposition team. Yeah, I think that's in itself a pretty nice fit.
Yeah, also Arcanine there doesn't appreciate those fighting moves either. And it also has, if I recall correctly, pretty solid bulk. So disguising as all those mons, which are pretty decently bulky, and a really only reasonable way to take care of them being fighting moves a lot of the time, or any weakness that they have, is the main way to get them. And having the option to trick with the Zoroark is really nice, especially considering Snorlax and Arcanine are hitting on opposite defense, or like opposite defenses to Zoroark. They're both physical and Zoroark is special.
I want to point out, having a Wish Passer like Aromatisse is very nice next to Aggron, which really relies a lot on a wish to keep it in the game for a longer period of time. I really like that combination. One thing to start talking about this team with, I think, is when we start talking about its removal, it's going to start to struggle. Mostly because your three main removers are going to be Hydreigon, Landorus, and Lilligant. And yes, Hydreigon and Landorus are okay users of Defog, but really you would hate to pigeonhole them those roles, particularly when their offensive game is so strong. So in that regard, that hurts the hazard game of this team a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to point out, it'd be a little bit hard for this team to take down a really strong, bulky ground. Perhaps something like maybe like a Hippowdon. A lot of your physical offense is coming off rock types, fire types, electric, ground. But yeah, a really bulky ground could be a bit tough for this team. Yeah, no grounded poison. So for a few mons like Seismitoad, Snorlax, Aromatisse, poison is going to be really frustrating and will really limit their longevity throughout the game. Those T-spikes go up.
Yeah. That is a rough Like the one thing that this team really needs is either dedicated removal or a grounded poison, because forcibly using a high dragon or a Landorus to get rid of that is really rough. And it also, not being able to remove those T spikes is really bad for Zorark, because then you can mark which Pokemon have been in pretty easily.
It's true.
So that's just something to be careful of. But overall, this is probably one of the scarier drafts in terms of firepower, just because it hits so hard. And a lot of the speed is pretty solid, so there's always a scarf threat from like half of the mons. So I think other than like the 5 rock options and webs being like there, it's just about playing around hazards at that point for Ezla. So
Can I add just a comment? Since when did Hydreigon learn to shoot stealth rocks out of its body? This is news to me.
yeah,
But interesting addition this gen.
I guess maybe Hydreigon is the dedicated removal with stealth rocks and defog.
Oh well. It's alright.
But I think I'm ready to move on. I like this draft.
Alrighty. So we're moving on to the next one?
Yep. And the next draft we have Jimmy, Ira, in the server. But
Meloetta Magica. Nice alliteration there. This is the first team where the offense is incredible. Perhaps this team is a little bit top heavy.
yeah.
Obviously, at the gate, you just have to acknowledge crazy double dragon core. There's a Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele is nuts, and there's a Sneasler. Incredible. But I'll go through the speed tiers quickly. You've got 143. 142, I mean. 142. 120. And then we've got a big drop. We go to 95, 90, 75, 70, 70, 67, 60, 57, 30. A really fast first two, and then a definite drop. So a bit of a gap there.
Yeah. This is also Jimmy's first draft in FNF, so hi to him. But yeah, I would say that the only thing this team is missing is Magnezone to make up Dragmag core. But like,
Bring back the Gen 5 Dragmag.
realistically, this team is really, really scary, even if it's only like Sneasler, Lele, Holt, Kieran Black, and then 2 filler mons.
I think this team, like, so the offensive core can realistically win on their own. You've got the Unburden, Magic Seed, Sneasler, Tapu Lele combo going there. You've got Dragon Span, you've got really strong hits from Heracross. But, in exchange for that, there are some really big weaknesses.
Yeah.
There's no ground type. So if you don't bring Volt Absorb, Lantern, Electrics will just be Volt switching all day. It's quite weak to Rock, quite weak to Ghost, quite weak to Dark, it's quite weak to Fairy,
Wait.
and
Oh, there's-
doesn't have a Dark type. So Psychics can also be a bit of trouble, particularly when there's Psychic Terrain up. So, question here, can the amazing offense beat the other team before they hit you.
Yeah.
Possibly. We'll
So,
see. We'll find out.
It looks like just really, really kill them faster than they kill me draft. And like there's a lot of that at the bottom, like that Pokemon, like Mantine. Metagross is fairly bulky, Farigiraf is bulky, Colossal bulky, Golbat, Lantern, they're all relatively bulky, and Tyran Black is pretty tough as well. But like you really have to exert all of your pressure at once, because I feel like you have there are a lot of win conditions here, but like very prone to just getting blown up along the way just because of the frailty. Like Sneasler being the secondary knock resist. There's 2 knockoff resistances, and Sneasler is like really not bulky. So, a little bit tough there. But
I want to put out too. I was going to say, removal-wise for hazards, there is one issue. The hazard removers are fine enough in themselves. You got Mantine, Golbat, and Colossal, but all 3 of them are weak to rocks.
yeah.
So itself's a little bit tricky.
Honestly, something to be really careful about is the fact that if you bring your main 4 and you bring removal, you have 1 slot left, and I'm like hesitant to say this, but also not. You basically have to bring Metagross, otherwise you're just gonna get smashed by Scarf Stone Edge.
Oh yeah. So, and Jimmy might surprise us. This team hinges on, can they win momentum game? If they can stay on the front foot throughout the game, I have no doubts they will win. However, if the opponent can perhaps utilize the speed gaps, bring in some Scarfers, plan well, there's some very pronounced weaknesses on this draft that can be exploited. So this is the team I think I'll have a really good time watching, because I feel like it's either going to be a strong week for the team or a not so good week for the team where they might get surprised.
So I would probably say this, like, probably I don't remember all the drafts like blow for blow in my head, but this is probably one of the most polarizing drafts in the way of any given game can be a 6-0 in 5 turns. Like, you get 5 turns in and then the game's over.
Yes, I am inclined to agree with that.
So honestly, this is a fun draft. Just high octane.
Oh yes.
We will be moving on now to our 4th coach, and that is Yuki.
The Ranzay Riolas. We'll go through the speed tiers really quick. We've got 145 with the Beedrill, 110, 100, 100, 97, 92, 80, 72, 68, 65, 60, G. So no real slow mons on this one. Another blisteringly fast one with the Beedrill. And I want to say one thing. Someone say Volt Turn. This is a super Volt Turn team. You've got the Beedrill, you've got the Zap, you've got the Urshifu, you've got Jirachi. All of them with really good pivoting outputs. Yuki gets some brownie points because I love Zapdos. I think it's awesome. So I hope it does well.
Yep. So this is not Yuki's first rodeo in draft, but I would say so far out of any draft I've seen him do, this is one of the better ones. It's really scary with that Urshifu and having so many momentum options to get onto the field of play with, and like very solid low tier pickings like Glimmet, that could really blow some games wide open with like T-Spikes, because we've seen a team already that doesn't have one grounded poison, and that's pretty scary for them. And there's webs for Shifu if it wants to SD, webs for Jirachi to be annoying as hell, webs so Crook can run not Scarf. There's a lot of hazards on this team, and with the momentum provided, I feel like this is like the exact team we were talking about being scary for the last team almost.
Yeah, I think as an offensive core, I think Zapdos Urshifu Rapid is really hard to a lot of the teams to prep for. Flying offense is really strong, and Zapdos is the king of that with the Hurricane. Combined with a really strong ground killer in Urshifu Rapid, I think overall that's a really solid pairing. But there are some weaknesses on this team as well.
Yeah.
First of all, this is a Volt Turn team that naturally doesn't want to take hazards, that has not very good removal. One of your defog is Mega B. I just think should never run defog. You have a Zapdos that really wants to run other things and may get limited in the fact that it gets pigeonholed into removal. And then you've got the Eldegoss that can rapid spin. But it's not great removal. Zapdos is your main option here, and a lot of games you won't want to run defog because you might want Power, a Heat Wave, or Thunderbolt and Volt Switch, or you want Roost, or U-Turn. And it's rough having to run that defog. The one good thing going for the hazard game here is this team has access to every hazard. Some decent options too, like Fruit can run rocks pretty well, Jirachi can run rocks pretty well, you got some spikes there with Frostlass. That will help you keep the momentum, which will be really good. But this team really struggles versus Edgequake. It's quite weak to rocks. Fire, outside of the Flareon, be a little bit scary. You had to deal with the fire type. And the other thing I just wanted to point out, and then I'll stop talking. There is a little bit of speed missing for such a strong Volturn team. Yes, Frostlass is 110, which bridges the 100 to 145 gap, but it's not coming every game, and typically it's an early game lead. So, for a team that really needs the momentum to get going, to be very careful about how the other team uses its own speed tiers versus it. You might rely on a few scarfs in order to make sure you're ahead in the game. If they can keep the momentum up, it'll be good. Particularly if they can pivot into things like Regireiko, Specs Exploud, alongside, Zapdos to Urshifu, which are crazy good breakers. Yeah, it'll be really fun to watch.
Alright. So while you were talking, I kind of realized a couple things. Like, this team has spectacular momentum. It's just, if it gets slowed down at all, you're really in trouble, because think about it, you could think about it like this. You have 3 separate Pokemon that are almost dedicated leads. You have Slurpuff, you have Glimmet, and you have Frostlass. So you're already down to 9 attacking Pokemon that need to be covered for. Eldegoss is pretty passive. And your main removal, if you're not running removal Zapdos, because Beedrill's not defogging. So one of the dedicated leads, Eldegoss, your Volturn core, then you gotta decide Jirachi, Crook, Regidrago, Exploud, which is a good collection of threats, but you're already kind of constricted into not being able to use as many as you might like, because you have to either compress rolls into Zapdos or bring Eldegoss. Additionally, Crook, I feel like is under a decent amount of pressure to absorb a combination of attacks. Like, any Mon carrying Ghost in Psychic moves, like Ghost Psychic Fighting, which I would say is pretty common coverage on a Mon that might be running like 3 attacks boosting move or pivot as a special attacker, could really tear this team apart, just because Crook is the only resistance to Shadow Ball and Psychic combined. But other than that, I would say that the team is pretty scary, especially if Urshifu gets in on webs, or T-Spikes are up, or there's a ton of hazards and you're just forcing switches every other turn. It's like, this team will kill you with paper cuts, or it'll just blow you away.
The paper will cut you, or it will crumple. We'll put it that way.
But I mean, so far there hasn't been a single team where there's not been like a flaw that's been greater or lesser than any other team, in my opinion.
Every team has flaws, and we will point them out. They will all be pointed out. So if you're prepping, come watch the video. We'll point out the flaws in your opponent's draft, perhaps the flaws in your own. We'll see how we go.
So I mean, like, realistically, you could just take us criticizing the draft and just make any like adjustments post weeks 1, because I forgot this was a 5-week season and not a 10-week, so there'll be transactions to be made any week. So hopefully that's what you take away from this, and not that we don't like your draft, because there hasn't been a single draft I don't like yet.
Every draft has good things going for it, has strengths, and every draft has weaknesses, and we are trying our best to point out both. Really, bad team can be piloted well with a good coach, and a good team can be piloted badly by a learning coach. So,
enough rambling and for apologizing. Let's move on to one of our previous season champions.
Yes, we got the Glendora Go-Goats. And can I start off this draft? I was talking to King about this draft, and he literally told me his goal is to have the highest average attack.
Okay.
I checked. I believe he's got an average of 101 attack, which I think is the highest. If I'm wrong, someone can tell me, and King can lose the average attack crown. I think he has succeeded in that.
Did you put Aegislash in his blade form?
I did put it as blade form.
Okay.
I think it's the highest. I haven't seen any higher. We'll go through the speed tiers quickly. We start at 123, got 110, 110, 100, 85, 72, 60, 50, 50, 50, 35, and 30. So actually a pretty decent spread. Not any huge varying gaps. He's got a good bit of speed, so he's got some things on the slower end. Big things we need to talk about is with a team that has such a high average attack, he's got some huge big hitters. I think he's got Mega Glade, 165 attack. You've got Ursulina, 140, Iron Hands, 140. You've got 140 Aegis Slash. Some huge daggers. You've got Sharpness Samurai. On the special end, you've got Iron Moth, which obviously is a really strong special attacker. So, really big physical bias. King knows that. He doesn't care. His goal is just to fizz spam his way through.
Wow.
There's a good Trick Room option here between Dotla, which is a really good Trick Room setup, and you've got Ursulina and Big Hands, which are really scary in the Trick Room.
So, my thought is, like, here's the thing. Aegis Slash counts as both, because you can run it specs.
Yes.
If you want it. So, you just run Iron Moth, Noivern, Aegis Slash. That's half your team, and that's special attackers if you want it to be. But, I mean, you're obviously going to overwhelm them with your physical attack with this draft. The threat Ursulina with the Guts Facade. Iron Hands is fat. It hits so hard. I think it has bulk up. Maybe I'm wrong. Samurott setting spikes from Mega Glade to just clean, or Iron Moth to just clean. Good removal with Serena. That's pretty reliable, dedicated spinner. Noivern defogs, Comfey defogs. They're not bad defoggers. So they're solid removal.
The removal's pretty good. Our issue here, I would say, is our setting of passives. We've got one Rocker, which is Knuckle Stack, which I don't think is going to come a huge amount. We've got a Sword of Spiker, and we've got some T-Spikes. So ideally, some more hazard options would have been better, but there we go.
I mean, he's got Samurott. You just put up 3 layers of spice with Cecil's Edge every day.
That is true.
So he does have probably what I would say that Samurott probably should have been tier 2. Because in my opinion, it's probably the best dedicated lead that you can have.
It's true.
So there's going to be hazards. You just bring Sash Samurott, gets up a lair with Edge, and then kills you with everything else. So realistically, I personally think this might have been the draft that's, if I was facing it, would have scared me most. It is kind of ground weak, although, well, mostly because your resistance mainly hinges on Serena, because if they bring Edgequake, Noivern's dead.
Actually, when I was looking through the team, Fairy be a little bit scary. Most fairies are packing a fire move for the Edge Slash, and then outside of that, you got Iron Moth there as your fairy resist. A lot of the team is with the fairy. Iron Hands doesn't like it. Blade doesn't like it. Noivern doesn't like it. Samurai doesn't like it. It's pretty strong. That's probably the one weakness that on the weakness type chart that I saw.
Yeah. Also, something this team probably wants to be a little careful of is just like fighting types with knockoff, because I mean, Comfey resists bad Fizz Death, but I'll count it. But like, you switch your primary fighting switches don't really appreciate knock, especially if rocks are up, for example. So if you lose boots on Noivern, and that's your defogger for the game, and their rocker isn't dead, then you are in a little bit of trouble. It's not a super hazard weak team, although kind of spike prone, because I don't think there's any recovery on this team. There's Wish.
Bruce Noivern, Synthesis, Serena, maybe?
Yeah. Wait, Ursaluna has recovery?
Sorry, Serena.
Oh, yeah.
No, Synthesis,
But like,
Serena.
I was more so talking about your big, bulky, hard hitters that are pretty slow, chiefly being Ursaluna, Iron Hands, and Aegislash. They don't have any recovery other than like Drain Punch on Iron Hands. So, I mean, honestly, this might be like the #1 case of drafting your biggest weakness, which would have been the Samurai.
Before we move on, we'd love to dub this team the foul play team.
Oh no.
Just run foul play. Let's run foul play as this team. Probably not, but we can call it that. We'll call this the foul play team.
Someone drafted Mandibuzz, so gotta be careful. Alright, so let's move on to our next coach.
With the Phoenix Sunstones, which I love the name. The name's great, and not only is it the Sunstones, he's actually drafted Sun, and it all works out perfectly. I love it. B tier Y.
This
There you go, you give it.
is not Tiller's first FNF draft. I think this is like his 4th. So,
Yes.
I mean, I think he might. No, he's like tied with King for the most seasoned player. But like all things considered, this draft looks pretty fun.
I would agree. Very fun.
Go ahead with your speed tiers.
Alright, so we've got the 136, 105, 105, 101, 95, 91, 81, 60, 45, 35, 30, 20. So a few slow ones right at the end.
Well,
Straight off the bat, we need to talk about two things. We have a water spam core of Iron Bundle and Gyarados. But we also have Sun core of like Lilligant, Sandy Shocks, Arcanine, and Torkoal. Question is, both of those on their own are very good. We've got a water spam core on the Sun team. I'm very interested to see how Tiller can balance the two. Now, this is Tiller we're talking about. Having a DD Gyarados, a Tiller team is always a good thing. He loves to set up threats.
all
his
things considered, the nice thing about this team is it's not reliant on Sun. I would say it probably leans more on its water core than the Sun core, because Sandy Shocks and Lilligant function very well independently of Sun, and as that because of how that works, it's really nice for him because he has the luxury of bringing them outside Sun. It's not like a case where you have a Victory Bell and if you don't have Sun, it's just dead weight. Tiller also picked like the worst fully evolved Pokemon ever in Spite Ops. Oh my god.
I think you mean
It's so bad.
the Hazard Swiss Army knife. All these hazards are there because of that one. He wanted to check those boxes.
I would say that like generally this draft is pretty good, pretty bulky. Weaknesses are decently covered.
Actually, can I go through a few?
Yeah.
It is very Edgequake weak, this team. Very much so. Lilligant might be the main resist. Rock ground. There's not much there to resist outside of Lilligant. It's quite weak to flying outside of the Sandy Shock and the Gudra. Doesn't appreciate a hurricane, for instance. There is no fairy on this team.
Oh no.
Or dragon resist. So if they're playing
Jimmy. Oh my god.
our double dragon span team we mentioned before, Meloetta Magica, this team might struggle. No dragon resist.
Hey.
Ghost is a bit iffy with the Gyarados only dark type. Then electric as well is a little iffy.
A little sketchy, yeah. I do want to note that, I mean, even though it is, a lot is hinging on it, I would say that Gudra's kind of like an exceptional case where it's like, if it's the backbone that needs to come every game to be the dedicated flying resist or whatever, it can do that, which I think really is nice for this team. It's also got a high enough special defense that it's not a terrible fairy resist as a dragon, because most of them are clicking Moonblast, and it's pretty alright with that. It's also neutral to dragon. Like, overall, I think Gudra's spectacular on this draft because it can be that dedicated resist to a lot of typings. And despite the lack of wish passing, which might honestly be like the best thing that could happen to this team, because I'm pretty sure a lot of fairies end up being wish passers, so kill two birds with one stone with that. But overall, pretty scary offensively. Gotta be really careful with Lilligant.
I think one thing to add is the removal in this team is a little bit interesting. Porcol is really your best removal option with the spin. Scyther hates rocks. You don't want to run as your defogger. Chatot doesn't want to run defog. Lilligant can run defog. Realistically, you probably want something else. So a lot of your removal will hinge on Torkoal. As well as it also wanting to set up your rocks. So, as a game, has a little bit to be desired there. This team, you know, it's got Iron Bundle on it, it's got Mega Gyarados, it's got Sandy Shocks, Undersung, it's got some really nice things there. Until balance the two modes, and, you know, just take people down with the type spam.
I think also Tiller is going to be living and dying by hustle on Mulligan. So good luck with that. Alright. So let's move on to our next coach.
We have Sunny Shore Luxrays. And straight at the bat, I want to say you've got brownie points from me because you've got the Chomp guard wide combo that I hold near and dear to my heart. Good on you. Speed tier wise, you've got a 120, a 105, a 102, a 100, 95, 85, 79, 78, 75, 72, 65, and 29.
Alright. So, I'm not necessarily going to comment on the team yet. This is Fire Warriors second FNF draft. And this is for Seafaom Miles. So, that's cool. But I'll let you do this one just because I helped with this draft a little bit, so you can take it.
That's alright. Oh, let's get into it then. We've got a team with a very nice first three of Garchomp, Scizor, and Charizard. They balance their weaknesses pretty well. You've got a really strong special attacker with the Sun. Got a really good fire killer in Garchomp. And Scizor is a really great pivot to get those mons in, dealing with fairies. You have a Veil option on this team, which is really cool. That will help facilitate some, SD Sizzle sweeps, Scale Shot Garchomp. I, for one, love a good DD Zard Y. Perhaps Fire Warrior will do the same. But even beside them, you've got other strong offensive attackers with the Basculegion, the Obstagoon, the Iron Thorns. All of them appreciate the Veil going up and facilitating their offense. The offense, one thing about it is outside of the Zard Y, it is very physically oriented. Breaking wise, you either want Zard Y or perhaps a defensive Vanillux, breaking through those physical walls. You may struggle versus the bulky waters. Your main breakers against them are going to be your Sceptile and Electabuzz. Yes, they are decent offensive options, but not the ideal breakers you might necessarily want to break through the waters. Stronger, there's a little bit of Volt Turn here between the Scizor and the Electabuzz and the Iron Thorns. Perhaps if they were to make some changes, some more Volt Turn options would really facilitate the really good offensive options on this team. A lot of your Volt will hinge on Florges, which is a very decent defensive mod. If it can pass Wishes around, that'd be very beneficial. This team is not great at setting hazards. Garchomp is a reliable stealth rocker, but doesn't necessarily want to bring it every game. And the same thing with the Iron Thorns. Has okay removal between Florges and Scizor. Not great removal necessarily. Yeah, it's a bit Edgequake weak. But the big thing with this team is very offensively focused. If they can keep momentum and set up behind the Veil, it'll be very solid. I don't think anyone will be looking forward to trying to prep against a Chomp, a Scizor, Basculegion, and a Zard Y.
Yeah, I do also just want to mention that despite the fact that there's no automatic setter, there is like a silly little rain core there that I didn't notice before. Like if you wanted to run Basculegion and Toxicroak, you could make a mini rain core.
Does Four just get like rain dance or a setter there?
I don't know.
Maybe. We'll see how we go.
But like overall, I think hit hard. Just hit hard. That is the draft.
We've had a few hit hard rounds, to be honest.
Well, I guess no matter what, every game will be a slugfest.
Love the slugfest.
So, all right. Well, yeah, I don't really have much to say because I have everything to say, and I don't want to reveal the team. All right. So moving on to I don't. Oh my God, this is kind of embarrassing to say. Was it Unit or Juge who won?
A Juge won.
Yeah. So here's our champion.
Current champion. A Brazilian heartthrob whom we all adore, who's also rocking the greatest, coolest Dragon Fairy Steel Core of all time. I love that it's Zygarde, King Gambit, Mega DAC.
Oh my God.
It's just awesome. Great
that
core. Can't ask for more than that, that's great. Feature wise, we've got 150 with the Electro, 110, 105, 95, 95, 90, 81, 350s, 49 and 30. This team has really strong pivot options.
Yeah.
You've got the really powerful U-turn off G-Darm. You have a really powerful U-turn off Slewing. Ultrace can turn, and Pursuing Electro can vault. And you've got teleport off of Slowking.
Oh boy.
All of that pivoting into some really strong hitters makes this team look very, very fun.
Yeah. I would say this team is probably one of the more terrifying ones we've seen so far, mostly just on the basis of the fact that the pivots are just, oh my god. Even the low tier pivots are pretty scary between like Moltres and Electrode. I would just say, like, I literally only have one complaint, and that's that your rockers literally never want to bring rocks.
Yes.
So, like, the main hazards on this team are non-damaging, which is just something to probably keep in mind.
One thing to really talk about this for this team is there is one hazard remover. It is Moltres, which is quad weak to rocks.
Heavy duty.
Which is not ideal for a pivoting. Not an ideal for a pivoting team. This team is very weak to edge weight. Another thing to consider is that there are a lot of quad weak mons on this team. Sometimes that works out. It forces teams to diversify their coverage. You've got Zygarde, 4 times weak to ice. You've got King Gambit, 4 times weak to fighting. Moltres, 4 times weak to rock. You've got Diancie, 4 times weak to steel. You've got Slitherwing, 4 times weak to flying. So, against a mon, let's say, a Lucario, or against a setup, another threat like Nidoking, or against a Greninja, some of those quad weaknesses can stack up and allow certain defensive mons to quickly pick off Juge's offensive threats. So he'll have to be careful about how he preps around that. There is a webs option on this team to really help facilitate some of his big threats. Really, this team lives and dies by the momentum and power. It's probably not going to the hazard game. There's a few weaknesses. Juge doesn't care. He's here to kill things.
Yeah. So, what I would say that I've noticed, and I do trust Juge a lot with this specifically, is he only has one removal thing, but he does have Magic Bounce Diancie, so that could probably dissuade hazards, especially with him piloting it. You never really want to set your own hazards on yourself, especially with everybody having such powerful hazards. You gotta be really careful. I feel like since we've already been doing this draft is really scared of Samurott Hisui. Because it gets the spikes up for free and it kills Moltres. So, yeah, you gotta be really careful. But on that same side of the coin, this draft hits so hard, and it literally can win games whenever it wants, because Zygarde can Dragon Dance, King Gambit can just win after 5 of your Pokemon have been knocked out. Darm can just blow you up late game. First impression, Slitherwing. Scary. Like, this
There's
really
actually one
terrifying
thing,
aspect.
some really good priority in this team. You've got E-Speed Zygarde, you've got Sucker Punch and Gambit, you've got First Impressions Slitherwing. All three of those are really powerful priority options.
Yeah. So, kind of feels like another kill before you die team, especially because, like, well, a lot of these mons are probably running boots like Slowking, Slitherwing, and, like, you don't want to, but Garm can if you needed to. Electrode might. Moltres literally never runs anything else. So, if boots didn't exist, I would not hesitate to call this draft like almost bad, but your boots do exist, so it's good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's really all I have to say. It's more dependent on how Jude is piloting DNC in my eyes than anything. That is the crux of this team. But without further ado, we will move on to our next team.
Conquerors, which is a name that exudes confidence. I like it.
Facts.
Secondly, 3 evolutions is very swag. Good on you. Should have drafted more evolutions, to be honest.
Yeah. Alright. So, speed tiers.
Alright, so we start out with a 130, with the Jolteon, 119, 103, 100, 95, 85, 85, 83, 75, 65, 65, 89.
Alright. So, all things considered, I would say this might be the draft with one of the best speed tiers, or the most reliable speed tiers at least. Oh yeah, I should mention Habaki's first. This is Habaki's first draft with FNF, but yeah, those speed tiers most reliable out of any. There's no crazy gaps other than the insane drop off at the bottom, which, like, whatever. So
I think the big thing to talk about here is we've got Roaring Moon. We've all seen Roaring Moon in action. It's scary. Combine that with a very good Fairy Killer Scissor, and combine that with a very good Fire Killer Gliscor. All 3 of them at U-turn. So those 3 make a really solid core, but also a core that will live hits and set up.
yeah, so
I think those 3 will come every game.
no, I mean, they're good enough to. I also like the Ceruledge pick to kind of back sizzle up. The fire resists on this team are fantastic. Roaring Moon, Ceruledge, Nihilego, Vaporeon,
Got
Thick
Pat
Pat,
as well.
Miltank. Oh my god.
Yeah, good options there. And one thing I really love the Lego for its hazard setting options there. You've got some decent rockers. You've got Nihilego, you've got Miltank, you've got Gliscor, T-Spike's an option, and you've got Spikes stacking also with the Overquill. There's a nice Spike stacking element there. Decent.
Oh, go ahead.
You go.
Alright. So I just kind of wanted to denote the, like, one weakness I kind of see in this team is that your 3-4 main attackers, other than like Nihilego and Hat, are physical, and if specifically I would say Roaring Moon and Scizor can't blow the game open, you might be susceptible to getting worn down over time. There's decent defogging, but you are susceptible to four move slot syndrome on 2 of your defoggers, and your last defogger, you don't want to defog with that one because you don't ever want to bring it. Miltank, good spinner.
Some respect on surviving.
But like all things considered, you probably just want to try and blow games up, and that's not impossible.
I wanted to point out, going back to your point about physical offense before. Notice on this team, I don't think there are any real mons that can go mixed. They either go fully physical, or they go fully special. Which will make it a little bit harder to keep your opponent guessing. Like a lot of teams, this team is quite weak to rock and ground, edgequake. I would have loved to have seen rapid spin a bit more on this team due to how good the hazard stacking is.
Wait, Miltank spins, right? I might have just forgot to put that down.
I don't know if it does it?
I feel like it does. If it doesn't, then whatever.
Someone will comment and tell us if it does or dumb if it doesn't. So we're all good. We're right.
Yeah. So
I think the one thing I actually would have loved to see more in this team is Katarine is a really good trick room user. One other cheap trick room user might have been nice.
Yeah.
Overall,
Give the team
really
another
strong
mode.
core of this team.
Yeah. Okay. I think yeah, so that kind of helps me. The way I would describe this team is terrifying, but it's also pretty linear.
Yeah.
So like linear is not necessarily like you lose immediately. It's still a really scary team with the threats you have. It's just your opponent could probably read into what you're bringing a little easier.
But that does not necessarily means it's a bad thing, because, you know, if I've got a Shifu single strike, you know what I'm bringing every week? Doesn't matter. It's still going to blow through. So, I'd say cling to that logic. Really hinge on your strong mons and let them win the game for you.
Okay, so, yeah, I would really just say make like your Shifu single strike and wicked blow. So other than that, I don't have a whole ton to say to finish up, but good hazards, good attacking threats. Just maybe give the team another mode like trick room or a mixed attacker to keep the opponent guessing a little more. So moving on, we got Drizzle.
Operation Vanillux. Speed tier wise, we've got a 135, a 116, a 109, a 104, a 100, 85, 80, 75, 50, 35, 20, and 15.
Wow. Wide variety.
So far, I think these are our best varied speed tiers. I'll just put that out. I think it's a really nice blend here.
Yeah, I really do. I think you can't really get away with not avoiding getting crept by this team, which is a really big boon. But I just wanted to mention, I'm fairly confident Drizzle was the last Victory Road champion. And this is his first time playing in an FNF draft since then. So I'm excited to see how that goes, because we technically have 2 champions concurrently. So yeah.
I think the big thing we can talk about this team obviously has 2 modes here. We've got an electric terrain Iron Valiant. We've got a sunny day Walking Wake. Those 2 can synergize together. and it will force the opponent to have to prep a certain way. Who and Iron Valiant are both really strong threats. Got the Manectric that's going to try its best to pivot them in. With access to every hazard. Try and facilitate those. And you've got a really strong backbone of Mandibuzz, Angrowth, Clodsire. All three are very hard to take down.
Yeah. Frankly, I think this team might be the most defensively reliable, like overall fundamentally sound draft. Especially because you got those modes being really scary. Iron Valiant being a horrifying mixed attacker. It doesn't need to come with terrain. It doesn't need to come with you don't need to go with Sun all the time, although you probably want to with Wake, and you can, but that's really all it is. So
I think one big thing is that removal-wise, this team really relies on Mandibuzz defog. Realistically, it can defog every week. It's one of the best defoggers there are. Lever is an option, and technically Smeagol can spin or defog or whatever you want it to do. So okay hazards there, hazard removal there. I think one challenge for this team will be how can it transition from sitting in with its really bulky mons into getting in Iron Valiant or Walking Wake to get a sweep going.
Well,
I think if
I would
Grizzle and
you've got Mandibuzz. That is your
Yes.
best facilitator. But
I think too, if it wants to defog, or if it wants to roost, or spread toxic, it's going to get harder and harder to get in those mons that you want. So I think flexible offense, hugely good backbone, good hazards, can it all combine together cohesively. That's my fun thing for this team.
yeah, this team isn't quite so slugfest as the other ones. I think this is the first team where it's like got modes you can shift between. Like you got kill now buttons, you've got fat stuff, you got decent pivots, you got mixed in between stuff like Deblade. Cleavor is nice for setting rocks, you turning out into your kill buttons. But like overall, like this team can do it all. I would say it's like the jack of all trades, maybe master of Iron Valiant.
It's quite masterful though. The last thing to add is we've got a strong Edgequake weakness, like rock ground really hampers this team outside of Tangrowth. There's a bit of an ice weakness. You've got Deblade, it's hitting on the special side, that's a bit rough. Outside of that, you've also got the Ninetales, but you know, ice can be a bit deadly for this team.
Yeah. Really fundamentally sound draft, in my opinion. Like I don't have a lot of complaints about it, and it has an Iron Valiant, so it's gonna kill teams, and so is Walking Wake. So like, bring those two every week, and then just bring a combination of whatever else you want. You'll always have a shot.
This reminds me a little bit of Sun and Fredly when Noel had Sand and Sun at the same time.
Yeah.
This time, E-Terrain and Sun can coexist, so I'm interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, this will be a fun draft to watch and keep an eye on. Anyways, let's move on to our next draft. Quigs.
Quigs with I Like Corsola, the man, the myth, the legend, Ursula round 1. It doesn't get much better than that. If you don't like that, you don't like F&F.
I also, well, actually, Zeke Wiggs has definitely played in the most F&F draft leagues out of anybody. So here's the thing: he has the best logo, and nobody can change that, in my opinion.
Yes, that is true. Speed tier wise, we've got 116, 111, 107, 90, 86, 80, 50, 43, 40, 40, 35, 20. So quite a slow bottom half, if we point that out.
Yeah.
There's really good rock options. Between, well, you got Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is getting up hazards no matter what. You got Glimora. Glimora is getting up hazards no matter what. But alongside that, you know, you've got the Corsola getting up rocks. You've got Rhyperior.
Common every game.
Every game. Well, really, the Ferrothorn opens up the option for offensive Corsola. So be aware of that. Those head smashes are coming strong. Access to every hazard. Really nice. Yes, access to every hazard. Just want to check the webs. A very reliable website. This isn't no Hotler, Jupiter, Spinnerack. This is Vigavolt, which can offer other things alongside setting up webs.
Yeah.
Your removal is like pretty decent. You've got Gerda, a decent defogger. Vigavolt can defog.
I think it's Wims, Girder, and Mega Altaria can defog. And Glimora has Mortal Spin, but there's no Rapid Spin.
Yeah.
So that's the hazard.
The setup options here, very nice. Like, you've got a DD alt, you've got your Belly Drummer Azu, you've got Moltres, you've got Blacephalon, and they are coming alongside those hazards. And a Whimsicott, which, you know, very good at facilitating sweeps. It's Encore shenanigans, it can T-Wave, it can Memento, it can put that up, light screen. There are a lot of setup options here.
I didn't really think about the ramifications of one team having both Glimora and Ferrothorn.
Yes, their hazards will be stacked if you play Ziquix.
Try switching around against this team, Jesus Christ.
If you are one of our Volt Turn teams, very bad removal, this is not the game for you.
Yeah, hopefully this is not your week 1.
There are some things here we need to talk about though. Steel, Ice, and Ground are 3 types that give this team a lot of trouble. It's a very slow bottom half. And the only Trick Room option is Whimsicott, which is a bit awkward. So Trick Room probably ain't coming. But yeah, your last half are all under 50 speed. Your Scarf options are a bit iffy. You've got possibly Moltres, possibly Blacephalon, but rest are eh. Ferrothorn and Alts are probably going to have to be the main backbone of this team. They'll probably be taking a lot of the defensive responsibility in order to facilitate the sweeps. But there's all the makings of some good sweeps here. We've got hazard stacking, good sweepers, some facilitating, and a Corsair. So we'll see what Ziquix can do.
Also, like, honestly, even though there's not a lot of it, the pivoting isn't bad on this team, honestly. Vigavolt and Whimsicott are decent.
Got the Moltres as well with U-turn.
Yeah. Also, something to mention is Webb's Belly Drum Azu, which, can be a little scary if your team is on the slower side, or if you're setup dependent. But, I mean, something to be careful of is not accounting for Aqua Jet just because the team is slow at general. I mean, honestly, fun draft. It has Corsola, but yeah. Let's move on. Now we got Floatzel.
Toronto Staraptors. I'm going to read out the speed tiers, and then I'll add a comment. Speed tiers are 200, 135, 135, 110, 110, 95, 94, 85, 70, 66, 60, and 35. The first dot point I have in my notes is this team goes zoom. It is really fast.
Oh my god.
Really fast.
Dude, you gotta account for that speed gap, that 65 speed. Oh my god.
Yeah, this team will outspeed you. It just goes really fast. I also want to add that we have a very dapper defensive core of Quagsire, Wheezing Galar, and there's no Cramorant in there too. Defensive core, very dapper.
Skeledirge, dude.
Skeledirge.
Wotian.
I was saying, appearance-wise, we have a fairly friendly-looking defensive core, but it's an actually pretty solid bulk here.
Yeah.
Alongside Wotian as well, alongside Fuxi. The Psychic Dark Fighting Core is bonkers. It is so strong. And Pow, Bird is teams.
Oh, God.
Whatever it won't kill, Lopunny will. And Latios is there behind, facilitating the offense. There's a Regieleki here. Everyone knows Regieleki is very one-dimensional. However, if you do not adequately prep for it, could destroy your team. Obviously, it sets up screens, it can explode, it can rapid spin, and get the main offensive bombs in. Support them.
It's also important to note this time, it is not ridiculously overpriced. It's not tier 2. So it's not draft killing to draft Regieleki this time either.
Yeah.
Overall, I would say this draft is freaking terrifying. You could get blown up so easily. There are demons left and right with that Chien-Pao and Megalopony. You've got good hazards. There's great pivoting. Well, not great, but there's good. No, there's great pivoting with the Volt Switch, Regieleki, U-Turn, Oopsie. I think I get U-Turn. If it doesn't, then whatever. Grafia, I think, gets U-Turn. Cramorant, I think, gets U-Turn. There's lots of U-Turn. There's a decent amount of bulk. Very nicely might just chip the game down for Chien-Pao and Lopunny to...
It's got good, Uxie will set up rocks every week. There's T-Spikes, there's Spikes. You've got some decent removal between the Wheezing, the Latios, and the Regieleki. All those are nice. However, cool things, this team has weaknesses. It is very weak. Rock, Fly, and your main 3 offensive mons are all weak to Fairy. Likewise, this team is so fast that if the opposition were to get up a Trick Room, that could be a bit difficult for them.
Yeah, you might even have to throw in some Iron Ball tech just to not lose to a Mon with less than 50 speed. Skeleton is a decent anti-trick room option, all things considered. Like, it's pretty decent with its attacking prowess and being able to function underneath trick room, but like, you don't want to make your Skeledirge into an attacker every week just because you're so fast. You can't do anything else out of fear of getting blown up by a Musharna or something. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a draft this fast. The only thing missing is Deoxys speed as a free.
to fill in that gap we were talking about before.
Yeah, you gotta fill it in. Get a Ninjask 2 in there
Perhaps
somewhere.
regular Electrode as well. Put Electrode in here. Yep.
You just gotta play it safe.
Ninjask. Fill those gaps.
Then Dragapult. So, like, yeah, fast draft. Fastest draft, actually. I don't think there's any draft that even compares to the speed. And yeah, don't get beat down before you can even make a move. Next up. Alright, we got Bloop.
This is the team. And you mentioned the defensive prowess of another team. This is the one I had in mind. For a strong defensive core. But before we get into that, I'll go through the speed tiers. Got 121, 109, 100, 95, 90, 87, 83, 70, 60, 45, 45, 39.
Alright. Oh my god. Clef, Rotom, Heat, and Ting-Lu. Oh no. What do you do?
I actually want to point out here, not only do you have quite a good defensive core, you have a defensive core that can pivot. Clef can teleport, Rotom can vault, Valiant can vault. The mons that don't pivot out set up hazards, which is very nice. And that's all facilitating a really mean offensive core with Torn and Medicham.
Oh my god. This team is designed to put you to sleep. And then just bring out Mega Medicham and you're like, uh-oh.
It's really solid. This is a team I would imagine is hard to break in prep. You would have to specifically target one thing and try to take that out. Because as a whole, it is very cohesive.
I'm not gonna lie. If there was a team I wanted to face least, it would probably be this one, just because of Ting-Lu plus Clefable. That seems horrible to play against.
But there are some weaknesses, as on every team. Funnily enough, there are a few types that are a bit iffy for this team. Water is one. You've got the Gastrodon, the Bramblegast, but a lot of else really like switching to waters. Round, part of the Rotom and the Torn, bit iffy. Fairy, again, a little bit iffy. Your Steel type and your Poison type are actually neutral to Fairy. And then Ice, also a bit iffy there as well.
Yeah.
Outside the Medi, this team does actually lack a few breakers. And Medi being so easily checked by Psychics, you're gonna depend on something like Drapion or Cobalion to break through them, to really open it up. If Medicham gets checked, is very hard for this team to break because it's so bulky. And likewise, it could be vulnerable to taunt, to stall breaking. I think those are the main weaknesses of the draft. Overall, a very defensive, bulky, great hazards, good cores.
I just think the main frustration point playing against this team is like you have a fantastic psychic to wall, what's it called? To wall Metacham, all right, and then he just has Tinglu, a whole Tinglu in the back. He just switches Tinglu, gets rocks for free, uses Ruination, kills half a Mon, then earthquakes the switch out. Like, oh my god. Tinglu Mega Metacham just seems so frustrating. Yeah, just low bleed, and then if you're caught sleeping, Metacham claims life. It's really like I guess Nightmare on Elm Street, where it just puts you to sleep and then kills you. So this looks like I hope the Blue do not get Game of the Week. I don't want to narrate an 80-turn game.
Might have to call Noel in to do that one.
Yep. So here we go. Next team. We got our runner-up from last season.
Ranch Glaceons. Hey, speed tiers. We've got a 130, a 126, a 123, 90, 88, 71, 64, 55, 50, 45, 45, 35. Yeah. Decent speeds. There is a gap though. You've got your first 3 very fast, above 120. And then there is a 30-point gap all the way down to 90. That is the speed tier a lot of Mons in the 110 range exploit, and will be running Adamant, Modest, whatever. So, very fast, first 3, afterwards.
So, okay. This team, it just kind of looks just like pretty sound, like with all things considered. You got breaking, sweeping potential, you've got decent default, you've got decent ADC spinner, and X control if you need it. You've got fat wrap. You've got the Dondozo plus the Registeel, which just seems like getting in the way, just to get in the way. Wish passing from Wigglytuff. You've got just good hitting. Oh my god, it will be so frustrating for people to play against just this core of really fast, annoying birds in the Alscarada, just to watch Annihilate take nothing and then get Rage Fist plus 50 damage.
I think the big thing with this team is that you got that very fast first U, and then it drops to about 60 and below for the bottom half. You've got some speed there, like you've got a mini little sand core where, Excadrill can possibly go a bit faster. But I think one of the things we'll see here, whether unit can transition from, I'll call them the blobs, Registeel and Dondozo, back into offense. There's such a big speed gap there. Can they control that? Can they balance that? I think one thing I would have loved to see a bit more of is a little bit more clerical support for the Annihilate. Yes, there's Wish on Wigglytuff. I love Wigglytuff, but it's hard to pass wishes with that mod. Got a little bit of clericking from Alchemy, but I think if there was a better wish pass on this team, that would have been so good for facilitating Annihilate. But, really good rockers on this team. Registeel is brought as Mons. Rocks will go up. Registeel is brought. Masquerade, it can get up the spikes to really facilitate Annihilate. Yeah. Removal wise, you've got 2 defoggers who are weak to X. And you might rely on extra drill to spin. But yeah. Outside of your 2 blobs, this team is very weak to ice. The offense is weak to ice.
Violite Ursaring is pretty decent defensively. Sandaconda's also pretty decent defensively. There's like bulkier. It just seems like some of it's kind of caught in the middle, especially with the general lack of recovery outside the birds. Wigglytuff. So like I think that like if this team got a not just like a Wigglytuff level like passer, like a good Wish passer, that would be really scary because Wish passing to Dondozo, Registeel, and Annihilate, and even honestly Sandaconda would be just terrifying because those mons receiving wishes or fat wishes specifically is just so annoying, and the longer the game goes, the more I feel like in that case, most of the time, unless it's against like specifically blue, there's no team that can really handle taking this team on 30 plus turns. So as we move further down, it just seems like we're getting more into the defensive teams and more sinking into that. So, yeah, overall, really like this draft. It's got a lot going on. Specifically with the free picks, I think really do a lot for the draft. So, now I will move on if you've got nothing else to say for this team.
I'm pretty good. Feel free to move on.
Right. Now we got Actius. We are moving towards the end of our draft right now.
Now, Lazy Leafeons. I am on the Lazy Leafeons bandwagon, so I will probably let Colin do most of the talking. Before I do that, I'll go through the speed tiers. 30, 106, 3 100s, 51, 65, 55, 39, 33, 27, 5.
Alright. So, thought about this draft a decent bit. Mostly because this is the one that I have to focus on since Wright was working on this one with Actius. Which also, this is Actius's... I think Actius has been in every single Seafaom Isles. So, kudos to them for sticking to it. So, without further ado, I'll kind of get into the draft here. I don't have predisposed notes. I've really been thinking while Wright has been talking a lot of the time. But, first things first, TU plus Tapu Koko is just killed. It's such a deadly little core there. And it's just kind of terrifying just with 2 mons, not accounting for the rest of the draft. But with the rest of the draft, you kind of open up to things like Salaman's kind of a deadly sweeper, or it could even just be defensive defogger if need be. Which, unless Treads, or Iron Treads, is not running your spin, you probably are doing that because Komala, unreliable to a degree. And yeah, so I think the fat on this team is pretty solid. Something that does need to be said is, again, the transition between the really bulky stuff and the kill buttons effectively. Iron Treads does that nicely, but between your Milotic, Bronzong, and Dusclops, it's kind of hard maybe to get between those. I know Milotic gets flip turn, but you gotta be careful with the 4-move syndrome on that mon. Also, the slower stuff, Machamp, Arboliva, don't have ways to get in super easily. So a lot of the time, it's relying on Treads and Poco to get Chi-Yu in, but they're not necessarily switching into things all the time. Treads can, Poco can. There is some wish passing on this team, which is nice for Dusclops, nice for Chi-Yu if you're not running Boots. But like the hazard removal on this team is fine enough that you can get away with not running Boots Chi-Yu most of the time, I would say, just because Treads is a great spinner. And if you're not running Treads, you could probably get away with running Defog on Salamence a lot of the time, so that's pretty nice. And you got a decent bulky core between your 2 Steels and Milotic. One thing that might be a little agitating, though, is knockoff. A lot of Mons don't necessarily appreciate it, and Chi-Yu never wants to get hit, and much less lose its item, even though it's one of your 3 resists. Machamp is decent Knock Soaker, but also no recovery, so just gotta be careful about that. Namely the Mons that don't ever want to get knocked, being Bronzong, Dusclops, and Milotic before getting burned by Flame Orb. Also, I mean, like, it's not always, like, fair to say this, I feel like, because it seems like every team is Edgequake weak to a degree, but, like, outside Bronzong, everything gets hit neutrally or super effectively by that. Milotic is decent at handling most Edgequake combos, but also just need to be careful with rocks or T-spikes being up, just especially with that lack of a grounded poison and a necessity to pivot into maybe Chi-Yu there. You got to be careful with T-spikes really whittling away a lot of the team. Although it does seem like you've got the double steal and 2 Mons that do like being burned, but if something like Glamora comes in first and starts spiking up, or you hit it and it just automatically lays those spikes, just gotta be wary of that. There is a Trick Room mode. Wouldn't say it's a fantastic Trick Room mode just because you're foregoing Chi-Yu and Tapu Koko, which, like, no matter what, those are unconditionally good Pokemon in any matchup. So, just something to consider, I would say. But overall, I think it's just a strong draft, and I mean, definitely winnable if you can get Chi-Yu in, which is not impossible, and it just claims lives, so decent hazard setting, good removal. Well, not decent. Good removal, good hazard setting. Maybe not a lot of hazards, but you can set. And that's really all I have to say. Good luck. Now we move on to our last coach. Unless you want to say something.
I'm all good.
All right.
I'm gonna move on.
The last one we got. Jumpy.
This Bomb Seals. Name. Awesome.
Okay. I don't know.
I'll go through speed tiers. We've got 105, 104, 92, 90, 86, 85, 85, 84, 75, 50,